It begins like any other morning. The world doesn't warn you when everything changes. It just does. At 6:17 a.m. Eastern Time, the first alerts light up phones across the country. Not weather warnings, not amber alerts. Something no one has seen in their lifetime. A flash somewhere in Eastern Europe. Satellite data confirming what everyone hoped was impossible. A missile launch. Within seconds, social media erupts. Confusion, panic, disbelief. News anchors stammered between speculation and silence. And as the story unfolds, the truth becomes undeniable. The first strikes of a global war have begun. Across the United States, the reaction is not immediate chaos. It's shock. Phones buzz on nightstands. Early risers scroll through headlines that morph from unverified reports to NATO mobilization confirmed. The coffee still brews. Traffic still hums. The morning routine continues. But underneath, something invisible starts spreading. At 6:43 a.m., an emergency alert freezes millions of screens. The message is blunt. National defense condition elevated. Remain indoors, await further instruction. Most Americans have never seen a DEFCON alert. Some think it's a hack. Others assume it's regional, maybe just the East Coast. But the sound, that sharp, piercing tone, cuts through breakfast tables and silences commuter trains. It's real. In New York, police activate protocols written decades ago. Crowd control, transit shutdowns, protocols no one believed would ever be used. Subways halt between stations. The airspace over Washington and Manhattan clears in minutes. Flights bound overseas are grounded. No explosions yet. No bombs. Just information. Fragmented, conflicting, terrifying. And in those first moments, a question forms in the minds of millions. Where is safe?
Because not all cities face the same fate. Not all places become targets. Some regions, isolated by mountains and distance, barely register on the strategic maps of foreign powers. Others, dense with infrastructure and military importance, glow like beacons. By 7 a.m., the panic begins to split. In Los Angeles, highways clog as people flee toward the desert. In Chicago, the lakefront fills with those who have nowhere to go. But in Boise, Idaho, the morning feels different, quieter, almost normal. Boise sits surrounded by mountains and farmland. No major military installations, no strategic ports, just a mid-sized city where people already know how to live without constant connection. The panic here is muted, controlled. Supplies won't last forever, but they'll last longer than most places. The local prepper community, once dismissed as paranoid, suddenly seems prescient. Generators hum to life, root cellars are checked, ammunition is counted. Across the country, television networks switch to emergency broadcasts. Anchors read statements that sound like history books coming to life. Government officials urge calm, but their faces betray something else. The knowledge that this is not a drill. As the sun rises over the East Coast, millions of Americans watch it with a new awareness that something irreversible has begun, and the shockwave, invisible but undeniable, is already at their doors. By 8 a.m., America is awake, not yet under attack, but no longer at peace. The world has entered a new chapter, and the first day of World War III has begun. By mid-morning, the rhythm of daily life begins to fracture. The nation's communication networks remain functional, but information has become both lifeline and poison. Every broadcast repeats the same message: remain indoors, stay calm, do not travel unless instructed. In cities like Atlanta, Dallas, and Denver, people pour into supermarkets. The aisles empty faster than any hurricane warning ever triggered. Bottled water, canned food, batteries, all gone within an hour. At gas stations, lines stretch for blocks, engines idle, tempers flare. Small eruptions of fear from people who just hours ago were complaining about traffic. The government's strategy is containment. Keep the public informed, but not terrified. Maintain order while military assets reposition behind the scenes. But the silence, the absence of visible war, begins to erode control. By 10 a.m., false reports spread faster than officials can refute them. Claims of missile impacts in Houston, explosions in San Francisco. Amateur videos, some real, many fabricated, show streaks of light intercepted by something unseen. For millions glued to screens, the line between rumor and reality dissolves. In Washington, the White House remains visible behind layers of barricades. Helicopters circle constantly. Military convoys move toward undisclosed positions. In New York, trading on Wall Street halts. The markets don't crash, they simply stop. Across the Midwest, power grids fluctuate, not from attack, but from demand. People charge phones, power freezers, hoard electricity. The fear of losing connection feels as real as the fear of attack. But not everywhere fractures the same way. In Burlington, Vermont, the response is measured. The city's small size and tight-knit community create a different kind of resilience. Neighbors check on each other. Local farms prepared to distribute food. The town hall becomes a coordination center, not a panic room. Burlington has no strategic value, no military bases, no reason for anyone to target it, and that invisibility becomes its greatest asset. In Spokane, Washington, far from the naval bases of Seattle and the chaos of the coast, life slows but doesn't stop. The Spokane River still flows. The mountains still shield. The people here, accustomed to harsh winters and self-reliance, simply adapt. They've survived isolation before. They'll survive it again. By mid-noon, schools close nationwide. The Department of Education calls it precautionary. Parents flood roads to collect children. Traffic chokes highways. Not from evacuation orders, but instinct, the need to gather loved ones close. In these 6 hours, America experiences the first paradox of modern war. The battlefield has not arrived, but its shadow already covers every screen, every conversation, every choice. And somewhere, in the quiet spaces between cities, in places like Asheville, North Carolina, nestled in the Blue Ridge Mountains, people begin to understand that survival may not be about fighting. It may be about hiding, about being forgotten. The afternoon brings something worse than explosions. Silence. At 1:17 p.m., the world goes quiet. Not from bombs, but from disconnection. The kind that hums when everything stops working. For hours, officials warned of cyber disruptions. Few understood what that meant until it began. Within minutes, ATMs freeze mid-transaction. Debit cards fail at pumps. The internet slows, stutters, then dies. Entire regions lose access to online banking. Government sites vanish. Local news feeds flicker out. Social media collapses like dominoes. It's not a total blackout, not yet, but it's a patchwork collapse, and it spreads fast. Each outage triggers panic that radiates outward like a virus. In cities, digital payment systems fail. Stores can't sell what little remains. In rural areas, cell towers drop one by one. Communities become islands.
Emergency radio stations become the last thread. A calm voice echoes through static. This is a national broadcast. Please remain calm. Federal authorities are responding. The words repeat every 5 minutes, a mantra meant to hold off panic, though few believe it anymore. By 2 p.m., hospitals activate emergency protocols. Generators roar to life. Ambulances idle in parking lots, conserving fuel. Families gather outside, desperate for news that can no longer be transmitted. At home, millions stand by dead routers. Parents rummage through drawers for forgotten radios, old flashlights, battery packs, anything analog, anything that doesn't need the grid. Neighbors start talking again, in person, across fences and driveways, the way people used to. The blackout doesn't destroy infrastructure, it disconnects, and that disconnection breeds something primal. Without information, people fill the silence with imagination. Worst-case scenarios, conspiracy, fear. But in some places, the disconnection means less. In Fargo, North Dakota, the loss of internet feels almost expected. The brutal winters here have taught people to survive without connection. Every home has a backup plan. Every family knows how to weather isolation. Fargo sits far from any coastline, far from any major target, surrounded by farmland that can sustain its people. The city's geographic irrelevance becomes its shield. In Colorado Springs, Colorado, the situation is more complex. The city sits near NORAD, the North American Aerospace Defense Command, buried deep in Cheyenne Mountain. That proximity makes it a potential target, but the mountain itself, hollowed out and fortified, represents something else: survival. If anywhere has the infrastructure to withstand catastrophe, it's here. The military presence means resources, organization, control. For civilians, the calculus is brutal. Stay near the target and hope for protection, or flee and risk the unknown. By mid-afternoon, one truth crystallizes. In modern war, the first casualties are not cities, not soldiers, but certainty itself. The ability to know what's happening, to trust what you're told. That certainty has died, and in its place, only silence. For the first time in decades, the United States feels alone, not as a nation, but as millions of individuals cut off from the systems they trusted, cut off from each other. In the void, rumors become gospel. Someone heard explosions on the coast. Someone saw military convoys heading west. Someone's cousin in the Pentagon said everything is lost. None of it verified. All of it believed. By 4 p.m., the sun begins its descent, and with it, the realization sets in. Night is coming, and no one knows if the lights will still work. In major cities, the countdown to darkness feels like a death sentence. In New York, Los Angeles, Chicago, the density itself becomes the threat. Millions of people, limited resources, fragile infrastructure stretched to breaking. When the power fails, these cities will plunge into chaos. The strong will take from the weak. Order will collapse. Everyone knows it. No one says it out loud. But in smaller cities, the equation shifts. In places like Rapid City, South Dakota, or Missoula, Montana, the darkness will arrive, but it won't bring the same terror. These cities have space, resources, communities small enough to know each other's names. When the power fails, they'll light candles, share generators, organize. They've lived through blizzards that isolated them for weeks. This is just another storm. By 5:30 p.m., grocery stores close their doors, not because they're ordered to, but because there's nothing left to sell. What remains is guarded by owners with shotguns. Police presence thins. Officers are called home to protect their own families. The social contract, held together by the assumption of continuity, begins to fray. On highways, traffic has stopped entirely. Those who fled early now sit in gridlock. Engines overheat. tempers flare. Fights break out over lane space, over nothing. The irony is brutal. They ran toward safety, and now they're trapped in the open, exposed, vulnerable. In living rooms across the nation, families gather around battery-powered radios. The broadcasts are fragmentary, pre-recorded messages from hours ago, updates that reveal nothing, instructions that assume infrastructure still exists. The government urges patience, promises help, but the help never arrives. At 6 p.m., the sun finally sets, and the country begins to learn which cities will survive the night and which will burn. The power outages begin on the East Coast, not from attack, but from overload. The grid, stressed beyond capacity, simply gives up. One by one, cities go dark. Boston, Philadelphia, Washington, D.C. The skyline, once ablaze with light, vanishes. What remains flickers from candles, lanterns, the faint glow of emergency beacons. In New York, the darkness is absolute. Millions trapped in steel and concrete towers. No elevators, no water pressure above the third floor. No light except what people create themselves. The city that never sleeps is forced into silence. And in that silence, fear metastasizes. Looters emerge. Windows shatter. The sound of sirens fills the void and then fades as police retreat to defensible positions.
But in Burlington, the darkness is different, expected. The city's small size makes coordination possible. Community centers open their doors, churches light candles, volunteers distribute food from local farms. There's no panic, no looting, just quiet determination. Burlington was never a target, and in the dark, that anonymity feels like salvation. In Boise, generators hum to life. Block by block, neighborhoods organize. Someone has fuel, someone has food, someone has medical training. They pool resources, share responsibilities. The darkness here doesn't isolate, it unites. By 8 p.m., the pattern is clear. The cities that prepared, that remained small, that never sought the spotlight, are surviving. The rest are descending into chaos. Night falls like a curtain across America. For the first time in generations, the country watches darkness arrive without the glow of civilization to push it back. Power outages, once regional, now blanket entire states. What light remains comes from candles, lanterns, and the cold blue of emergency beacons. The coastlines go dark first, then the cities, then the spaces in between. Major cities enforce curfews. Police cruisers roll through empty downtown streets, loudspeakers echoing between buildings. Return home, stay indoors, remain calm. The words sound hollow, even to those who speak them. In the countryside, families cluster around battery radios. The voices that come through are fractured, distant, pre-recorded updates from a world that no longer exists. Somewhere, a broadcast repeats instructions to boil water, though no one knows why. Fear has changed shape. It's no longer the fear of impact, of invasion. It's the fear of the unknown, the invisible front line where nobody knows what has already been lost. At 8:30 p.m., rumors spread of explosions offshore. Unconfirmed reports of naval clashes in the Atlantic. Without internet, no one can verify. Without phones, no one can share. The information vacuum fills with imagination.
On highways, traffic has stopped completely. Those who fled early now sleep in their cars. Engines off to save fuel. Doors locked. Windows up. The skies above them go quiet except for occasional streaks of light. Aircraft, satellites, or perhaps something else. No one knows anymore. No one can ask. In living rooms across the nation, Americans rediscover rituals once forgotten. Handwritten notes, whispered prayers, the sound of silence between heartbeats. Some neighbors share generators, pool resources, create small circles of light and warmth. Others bar their doors, load weapons, trust no one. The social fabric begins to tear along invisible seams. And yet, in the darkness, resilience emerges. In Spokane, amateur radio operators, once dismissed as hobbyists, become vital links. Their equipment, analog and independent, still functions. Messages relay across states, confirmations of safety, requests for help, coordinates for supplies. The digital age has died, but the analog world remembers. In Asheville, churches open their doors. Volunteers distribute blankets, food from local farms, medical supplies from hoarded stockpiles. The Blue Ridge Mountains that surround the city create a natural fortress. No strategic value, no military targets, just geography that shields, and a community that remembers how to survive without the grid. In Fargo, the response is almost methodical. The winters here train people for isolation, for darkness, for cold. Every home has backup heat. Every family has food stored. The city's location, buried in the Great Plains, far from any coast, makes it invisible to foreign strategists. That invisibility, once a source of irrelevance, has become its greatest strength. By 10 p.m., the blackout spreads coast to coast. The United States, for the first time in modern history, falls asleep disconnected from itself, disconnected from the world. The first day of World War III ends not with fire, but with silence. The war has not reached every home, but its shadow lives in every mind. In the dark, questions form, unanswered, unanswerable. How long will this last? What happens tomorrow? Who is winning? Who is losing? Does winning even mean anything anymore? The people in cities like New York and Los Angeles face a brutal calculation. Stay and hope for rescue, or flee into chaos. Neither choice offers safety, only degrees of risk. But in places like Burlington, Boise, Spokane, and Fargo, a different calculation emerges. We were never important enough to destroy. We were never visible enough to target. We were forgotten. And in this moment, being forgotten means survival. The night deepens. Across the country, millions lie awake, listening for sirens, for explosions, for the sound of aircraft overhead. Most hear nothing, just the wind, the rustle of trees, the distant bark of a dog, ordinary sounds that now feel ominous, loaded with meaning. Every creak of the house becomes a footstep. Every gust of wind becomes a shock wave. In Colorado Springs, the situation remains tense. The proximity to NORAD means military presence. Helicopters circle constantly. Convoys move through streets. But there's also structure, organization.
Rations are distributed. Medical care is coordinated. The military infrastructure that makes it a target also makes it defensible. For now.